welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we're so glad to have you here. New Jersey voters handed Democrats a resounding victory in the November 4th gubernatorial race, electing Mikey Sherrill as the state's next governor. There were unexpected gains in the state legislature as well for Democrats. So questions remain now for Republicans about their path forward. Standing by is Assemblyman Paul Kanitra, who represents New Jersey's 10th legislative district. He's a Republican, and that district takes in parts of Ocean and Monmouth counties. He's going to be talking about that. Joining me now is John Wisniewski, a former legislator, a 2017 gubernatorial candidate, and longtime Democratic powerhouse. To unpack all of this, John Wisniewski, welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Let's start with the results. It wasn't even close. Governor-elect Sherrill's win, it was decisive, well beyond what most polls predicted. So what do you see as the motivating factor behind this overwhelming victory?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that you really need to look at. Number one, Mikey Sherrill was a fantastic candidate and attracted a lot of support that wasn't part of the Democratic victory 4 years ago. Number two, Donald Trump created a rationale or an urgency by a lot of Democrats to come out and support her candidacy and the candidacy of a lot of Democrats running for the assembly. And if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have had that enormous turnout. Look, when you compare election to election, 2021 to 2025, Jack Ciattarelli actually outperformed the votes that he got 4 years ago by about 150,000, maybe almost 200,000 votes. But on the Democratic side, Mikey Sherrill really outperformed what Phil Murphy got 4 years ago by huge numbers. Traditional Democratic counties that have always been very robust were even more so. I think at one point in time, Essex County, long before the polls had closed, had hit 110% of the turnout from 4 years ago. So it just shows you the sea change that occurred in this election for Democratic performance.
Well, and let's talk about down ballot. Democrats now hold at least 55 of the 80 seats in the Assembly. This is the biggest majority in 52 years. So can we talk a little bit about, that impact? There were races that, really are surprising that should have stayed Republican but did not. What is this telling you as we now have time to look a little bit more into the numbers and look at certain counties and the way certain districts went, like the 22nd, the 2nd, the 25th, 21st, in John Bramnick's district, those legislative seats flipped to blue. So what are your thoughts?
Well, certainly the most surprising was the 21st, seats that had been for a long time Republican. And when I was in the legislature, those were never seats that Democrats seriously thought they had an opportunity. But what this underscores is that over the years, New Jersey has become progressively more Democratic. When you look at seats in the 2nd and in the 8th, you're looking at seats that at one point in time had been Democratic, had gone Republican for a short time, but now are back Democratic. And so those show a realignment in those districts where voters are coming back to the Democratic side. In the 21st, you're looking at a change in the demographics of that district, the Democratic votes pushing out from the traditional urban core now out into the suburban sections of the 21st district.
When you look at the presidential election, New Jersey went for Kamala Harris, but Donald Trump did make a lot of gains and outperformed what a lot of people thought he would. But the way the state votes for a governor is not necessarily how they vote for a president. Still, Mikey Sherrill broke a number of trends. You haven't had somebody in the same party win that third term, which she did. And you looking back, the Republican Party hasn't won a statewide seat since 2013. So what is that again telling you about the state when it comes to, as we're about ready to head into midterm elections, how voters look at our presidential and congressional as opposed to how the state is run?
Well, I think part of the reason for the Democratic overperformance, if you will, in this election was the fact that the standard bearer for the Republican Party had so closely embraced Donald Trump that even for moderate Republicans, for many unaffiliated. So that was just a bridge too far. And they all came across to the Democratic side. It really underscores the fact that Republicans in New Jersey, as you know, from a Democratic side, as much as Democrats may call them really conservatives, from a national level, Republicanism in New Jersey is a more moderate strain. And I think that the standard bearer in this race was trying to carry it a little too far to the right, and that cost votes.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what this means for New Jersey is that everybody has to recognize that each election stands alone. There's no two elections that are the same. There's no two trends that are the same. And so this was an election based on a really good Democratic gubernatorial candidate in Mikey Sherrill, a really helpful presidential, person in the presidency who was drawing votes towards the Democrat because of the way he was acting, all came together to give an enormous Democratic turnout.
Yeah, so Mikey Sherrill had a lot of things going for her. Now that she's won, she is now the governor-elect. So with that comes a lot of responsibility. The transition from Governor Phil Murphy to Mikey Sherrill, that's underway. Her Lieutenant Governor-elect Dale Caldwell is heading up that transition on the campaign trail. She talked a lot about on day one what she's going to do is freeze utilities. She talked about home buyer credits. She talked about child safety. So let's talk just a little bit about this transition and the things that she talked about on the campaign trail. How easy is it going to be for her not just to talk the talk, but walk the walk?
Yeah. Well, there was a saying, I think Mario Cuomo was the original author of it, and it was that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. On day one, Mikey Sherrill will have all the authority of the office of governor, which means she'll be able to issue executive orders. And that executive order, number one, I think, will be about utility rates. I would expect that somewhere along the line there's going to be a legal challenge. What's really going to be required for long-term change is for the governor to utilize the power of overwhelming majorities in both houses of the legislature to enact laws to implement the policy she's talking about. Executive orders can only go so far. Legislation is what's really required, but she has the support in the legislature to be able to implement some of these policies. It's going to take time, and nothing happens overnight. First thing she's got to do, and it's a very short window, is to assemble an administration, chief of staff, with the deputy chiefs of staff, the principal cabinet officers. There's literally hundreds of posts that she and her team need to go through and figure out who's going to be there on day one to help her implement the things she talked about on the campaign trail.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about that? What is going on behind the scenes? In the legislature, we have, again, a few seats that are flipping. Lame duck is coming up. But when it comes to Mikey Sherrill, there's a whole transition office for people. There's a physical location where that transition office is set up, and it is in full swing, working to fill those cabinet posts and the hundreds and hundreds of jobs that will come with her administration. And then, What about the other people who have been there as part of Phil Murphy's office for the past 8 years? I guess a lot of them will be looking for their jobs. Will there be some who stay? What can you give our viewers a little bit of insight as to what's going on behind the scenes?
Well, part of the campaign of becoming governor is that you're going to put your own mark on state government, right? You're not running, nobody ever runs for governor to say, I'm just going to continue to do what my predecessor did or keep the people. So for all of those cabinet officers, I think in the back of their minds is certainly the realization that it is the governor's prerogative to put in her own people. She may keep a few of those people who are there currently, or there may be a rolling transition. But I fully expect that she wants to have state government reflect her priorities, the way that she governed while she was in Congress, to reflect her priorities from her background as a prosecutor, as a Navy veteran. So I think that there will be changes, and those changes will reflect her governing style. It's just going to take time. And right now, I mean, the people are probably, not probably, they are, flooding everybody that they can find that they think is related to the transition with resumes, right?
Yes, the
Everybody
resume.
wants to get in front of the decision makers on who can be what. And so there's a lot of that going on right now. And that's going to continue right through inauguration. She won't have a full government in place on inauguration day. She'll have the principal key players in place, and that will continue to grow out as the days and months move forward.
Yeah, that is something to think about. All the resumes and the phone calls that were happening that night. Once the campaign ends, then it, is shifting into, people and looking for jobs and where are they landing and what does this mean for so many people. We could do a whole show just on that and all the lobbyists and special interest and other groups. But for the voters, we talked about more people came out to vote for Jack Shirley this time than did 4 years ago. So for in a state, for as big of a win as she had, a landslide win of 14 points, what does she need to do, if anything, to try and bring about unity and to reach some of those voters, for the many voters who did not vote for her, to bring about unity in the state? Because the Democrats, they have such a majority, but they're still like more Republicans voted than ever before. So how does she bridge that gap?
Well, I think she bridges the gap in her acceptance speech on tonight. She said it very that she wants to be a governor for all New Jerseyans, for those who voted for her and for those who didn't. And I think that was the first reach out by the Sherrill administration to say, look, we can have disagreements. That's, embedded in our system of government is that we're going to have differing viewpoints. And the successful leading of government is melding those into policy. And I think that statement that she wants to be governor for all New Jerseyans, those who voted for her and voted against her, really signifies that she's willing to listen to the concerns that many people who didn't vote for her have. She may not agree with them, but she's going to listen to them and she's going to try to understand them and try to either convince those people who disagree with her on why perhaps they ought to listen to her viewpoint, or at least try to incorporate some elements of what those people who didn't vote for her would like to see. But she's got a mandate. I mean, if you look at recent gubernatorial elections in New Jersey, there hasn't been a candidate who has won by as robust a number as she has. And so she certainly would be within her rights to say that she's got a mandate to govern based on the way she campaigned.
All right. Well, John Wisniewski, we thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And as it gets closer to the inauguration and once she's sworn in, we look forward to having you back on to talk more about what the Mikey Sherrill administration is going to look like. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Good to be with you.
Assemblyman Paul Kanitra is a Republican representing New Jersey's 10th legislative district, which takes in parts of Ocean and Monmouth counties. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here again with you, Laura. I wish it was under a little better circumstances for the Republicans.
Right. Well, Democrats not only kept the governor's office, but they also really made some, they strengthened their grip on the state legislature. So from your perspective, as a Republican who survived the night, what do you see as the biggest factors behind the Republicans' underperformance in the election?
It's really unbelievable what happened when you think about it. I mean, we're in a little bit of a bubble here in Ocean County. We won 2-1 in this election. I've got a little bit of Monmouth County. They did great in most of Monmouth County as well. But let's be frank, it was a bloodbath for Republicans around the state, and almost no one saw it coming to this magnitude. Even the pollsters that had what I thought were going to be massive outliers of calling it 8 points were still off by a tremendous amount. And clearly there was an eye towards what was going on in D.C. and at the national level, and it motivated some groups to come out more than others. And, Republicans, we hit the numbers we wanted to hit. It was just this massive influx of voters who normally don't come out in gubernatorial elections, only come out during presidential elections, that sunk us. And we've got we've got a lot that we've got to do within our party here in the state if we want to be relevant again.
I mean, New Jersey is a very unique state. In the presidential election, President Trump did way better than so many people expected, even though Kamala Harris won the state. But when you look at a gubernatorial race, the way the state goes for president isn't always how they go for governor. But as you've mentioned, we had 8 years of a Murphy administration where there are a lot of people who can't afford to live in the state. All of the problems were, under the leadership of not just a Democrat in the governor's office, but in the legislature and the assembly and the Senate. So you would think that, the way the pendulum swings back and forth in New Jersey, and we haven't seen it since the 60s, is somebody win that third term. So a Democrat's been in office for 2 terms, and then now another Democrat comes. So it really made history in a number of ways, as well as being a surprise to so many Republicans, because earlier in that day, a lot of Republicans I was talking to, it's going to be a late night. Get ready for a late night, and it turned out to be pretty early.
The average New Jerseyan thinks that the state is going in the wrong direction, yet Republicans haven't had any control for eons now, and yet they still elected another Democrat to go forward. And look, voter enthusiasm is a big part of this. You touched on the Trump dynamic. You touched on the presidential elections versus gubernatorial elections. Voter enthusiasm, I think, is the crux of everything. Clearly, Republicans did not capture all of the independents who voted for Trump, all the blue-collar Democrats who voted for Trump. It appears, you look at a district like District 3 in South Jersey, it's very clear, considering that dynamic, that they went for Mikey Sherrill, and a ton of those people probably voted for President Trump, which is interesting. The 200,000 extra registered Republicans that we got over the last 4 years didn't help us either. And then you start looking at individual demographics, and it is seismic. Young women, I've seen 2 or 3 different numerical permutations here, but young women voted anywhere from 80 to 87% for Mikey Sherrill. And for the Republican Party, that is absolutely something that you can't recover from.
Yeah, so as you're still looking through the data, figuring out what went right, what went wrong, again, more people came out and voted than Republicans. You all were meeting your metrics. You were meeting what you thought you needed to in order to win, right?
We were. I think one aspect of this that people aren't really looking at is ticket splitting. Across the country, generally only about 3% of voters actually ticket split. That's how rare it is. Most people just go right down the line, right, and they vote for one party. Here in New Jersey, it had historically been at around 10%. That was cut in half or even more, looking at the numbers and crunching the numbers, where, again, we went right back to just going right down the line. I saw it here in Brick Township, the second biggest town in my district. Democrats had controlled it for a bunch of years, and 3 Republican council candidates swept into power, mainly as the result of Brick Township going 23 points for Jack Ciattarelli and everybody just going right down the line. So again, from my perspective, I think the key statewide, considering the deficit that Republicans are in, is going to be all about educating voters from here on out.
Yeah, I mean, in the 21st district, where John Bramnick is state senator and who was a candidate for governor, the legislative seats went Democrat. And I think that was the biggest surprise of the night for a lot of people.
That's exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up, and you all be impressed at my statistical knowledge, because District 21 in 2021 voted for Assembly Republicans by, I think, like 6.6%. Jack Ciattarelli won there by about half a percentage point. It was like a 6-point range. But in 2025 in LD 21, in this election, it voted for Assembly Democrats by 7.5 percentage points, and Mikey Sherrill won there by 10.5 percentage points. I mean, that's seismic, and I will say that is a district that I think women disproportionately play a role in, even more than they do in other legislative districts, and again, maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Where does the Republican Party in New Jersey go from here? What does it take to rebuild? It's been 2013 since they've won a statewide office. What's needed?
A complete overhaul. Anything less than a complete overhaul and a change in how we're doing things is going to land us in the exact same spot. And I'll tell you, I am a member of a lot of different national organizations, from ALEC to NCSL to GOPAC, where I network and I meet with fellow state legislators from across the country, some that are in the minority, some that are in the majority. I will tell you, New Jersey is very, very different than the rest of those states. I think nepotism plays a huge role here, and it inhibits younger, more dynamic candidates from coming up through the ranks. And I can tell you that the same stodgy candidates are not going to get the job done. The same old playbook is not going to get the job done. If we want to win and we have to be relevant, we have to have candidates that are different from they were in the 1990s. We have to have candidates that can resonate with their constituencies, connect with their constituencies, and form a bond with their constituencies where they go, I like that guy, I like that girl, I'm turning out and voting for him.
I mean, you have more and more young people interested and engaged. How do you tap into that? We don't have the county lines that get to more or less dictate who's going to be on what place in the ballot, or almost, really have such influence when it comes to the election. But I'm still hearing, there's still a part of the network that still exists, is what I'm hearing.
Well, first you have to identify them, right? You have to identify all the up and comers, who they are. Then you have to give them a support system, okay? As somebody like myself, I mean, I'm only where I'm at because I ran in a primary for mayor. I had no support. I ran against the county screening committee recommendation for assembly, and I won off the convention floor. I am an anomaly in state politics. And you get enthusiasm, which is hard enough in this day and age to even find somebody who is a potential worker bee who has the enthusiasm where they're willing to do it, is a rarity. Now, once you identify that person, you have to legitimize them, right? You have to train them up. They have to understand how to talk on the issues, how to knock on doors, how to handle retail politics. And then you actually have to support them. You got to get them on a county committeeman or county committee woman seat. You have to get them on a board of education. You have to give them some sort of role where they can prove their leadership, where they can get some name recognition, and where they can get into the rotation earlier than their 50s or 60s. Again, I'm 46 years old, and by all accounts, everybody always says, Paul, you're the future. I'm the future. I'm 46 years old. I shouldn't be the future, right? People my age shouldn't be the future, but you could count on one or two hands how many legitimate people we have in the party under 50 years old, and that is a problem.
And we could do an entire show dedicated to that, but we're going to have to wrap it there. Assemblyman Paul Kanitra, New Jersey's 10th Legislative District. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Always great being on with you, Laura. I'll talk to you soon.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.